The small town of Willow Creek prided itself on tradition. A quiet, tree-lined community nestled between rolling hills and crystal-clear lakes. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's name, and Sunday service wasn't just a ritual. It was a way of life. At the heart of the town stood St. Mary's Church, a brick chapel with white trim and a towering steeple that could be seen from nearly every corner of town. And at the heart of St. Mary's was Father Thomas Whitaker, a man beloved by many, trusted by all, and regarded by most as a pillar of faith and strength. No one ever expected the truth to come from someone like Melanie Carter. Melanie had left Willow Creek at 20, fleeing the conservative whispers and watchful eyes for the chaotic but freeing streets of Chicago. She had dyed her hair bright red, pierced her nose, and enrolled in art school. Most in town said she was just going through a phase, that she'd be back in a few years, had bowed in repentance. But she didn't return for over a decade. Not until her mother fell gravely ill. When Melanie walked through the town square again, now 32 with dark brown hair and a tired look in her eyes, many barely recognized her. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, no makeup, no dramatics. Her once rebellious fire had dimmed, replaced by something quieter, more contemplative. At the hospital, she sat by her mother's side for 3 nights. Laura Carter, frail but still fiercely sharp, whispered truths in a voice that trembled with regret. And on the 4th morning, she passed away. That Sunday, Melanie surprised the town by attending Mass. As she walked through the wooden doors of St. Mary's, the pews filled with familiar faces turned in unison. Whispers fluttered like nervous birds. And there, at the pulpit, stood Father Thomas, aging gracefully in his 60s, still sharp-eyed, still smiling with the warmth that had endeared him to generations. Their eyes met, and for the briefest moment, the smile faltered. After the service, Father Thomas approached her outside the church steps. "Melanie," he said with practiced warmth, "it's been a long time. I'm truly sorry about your mother." "Thank you," she replied, voice even. "She spoke of you in her last days." That gave him pause. "She did." Melanie nodded, her expression unreadable. "She told me everything." A week later, she was invited to speak at a town council fundraiser. She had always been known as the girl with stories, and everyone wanted to hear what she had learned after all her time in the city. They weren't expecting what came next. She stood behind the microphone, her voice calm but commanding. "There's something I need to share. Not to hurt, not to divide, but because the truth deserves to be known. Especially here." The crowd hushed. Many leaned in, curious. A few already looked nervous. "When I was 17, she began, I used to spend a lot of time at St. Mary's. I helped with youth events, volunteered at the shelter, even helped clean the church. I was idealistic. I believed in people, especially in the goodness of someone like Father Thomas." The name dropped like a stone in a still pond. Some people chuckled uneasily. Others frowned. Melanie continued. "But there was something I never told anyone. Not until recently. Not until my mother begged me to." She paused, gathering herself. "One evening, after choir practice, I stayed behind to organize the music sheets. I was the last one there, and Father Thomas came in. At first, it was just conversation, casual, warm. But something shifted. He started asking personal questions. About boys, about feelings, about things I didn't think were appropriate." A sharp murmur rippled through the crowd. I was uncomfortable, but I laughed it off. I was young. I didn't know how to respond. He asked me to stay later to help him sort the hymnals. I agreed. But then he touched my hand in a way that wasn't friendly. He stood too close. He said things I'll never forget. A hand went up from someone in the crowd. "Are you accusing Father Thomas of something?" Melanie's voice didn't waver. "I'm saying that he crossed a boundary. One that he should never have crossed. And it wasn't just me." More gasps. Faces turned pale. A few people stood, ready to leave. "My mother told me before she died that she, too, had kept secrets. Years ago, when she was in her 30s and struggling with loneliness, she sought guidance from Father Thomas. But he used that vulnerability. It was subtle, careful, and disguised as spiritual counsel. But it was manipulation, emotional abuse, maybe more. Melanie looked around. You may not believe me. That's your right. But ask yourselves, how many people have come forward about leaders they once trusted, only to be silenced or dismissed? How many of us carry shame because someone else abused their position of power? The room remained silent. That evening, social media exploded. Some townspeople called Melanie a liar, accusing her of slandering a good man. Others messaged her privately with stories of their own, echoes of unwanted conversations, uneasy moments, and questions they'd buried for years. The church denied any wrongdoing. Father Thomas issued a carefully worded statement. I have always served this community with integrity. I have no memory of the events described, but take all concerns seriously. The bishop launched a quiet investigation. Meanwhile, Melanie stayed in town longer than she had planned. The backlash was harsh. She was excluded from gatherings, stared at in the supermarket, and even threatened anonymously online. But she also received letters, dozens from women and men who had once served under Father Thomas. Many recounted their own uncomfortable experiences. Some were eerily similar to hers. Then came Emily Foster. Emily, a quiet, soft-spoken woman in her early 40s, requested to meet Melanie in private. They sat together in the garden behind the Carter home. I was 12 when I met Father Thomas, Emily began. He made me feel seen, special. He gave me extra attention during Sunday school. At first, I loved it. I thought I was lucky. But over time, it changed. He'd find excuses to be alone with me. He made me feel confused, guilty even. I never told anyone. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I married young just to escape the church. My parents never understood. They thought I was rebelling. But the truth is, I was terrified. Melanie took her hand. You're not alone. And slowly, over the weeks, more women stepped forward. One had been 18, another in her mid-30s. None had told anyone. All carried scars. The bishop's investigation became formal. Father Thomas was placed on administrative leave while the diocese brought in outside investigators. Some townspeople were outraged at Melanie, not at the priest. They said she had destroyed a legacy, broken the trust of a community. But others, especially the younger generation, stood by her. They began to question the systems that allowed such silence to persist for so long. A local therapist opened a support group. The town newspaper published an op-ed titled, Believing the Brave. A year later, the diocese concluded that there was credible evidence of misconduct by Father Thomas. Though not all accusations could be proven beyond doubt due to the passage of time, the church took disciplinary action and announced plans to implement new safeguards and reporting procedures at St. Mary's. Father Thomas resigned. Melanie didn't attend the final service. Instead,